Hey everyone, my husband 34, and I 36, are in a tough situation with my sister-in-law Barbara 41, and we need an outside perspective on whether we're overreacting or if our stance is justified. We're leaning towards the latter but are open to thoughts. Thanks in advance. Barbara has 4 boys. Leo 17, Oscar 14, Rivaldo 13, and Cristiano 7. Despite her having a rough history with bad relationships, her kids have always been well behaved. The only constant man in her life has been Ray 48, her on and off husband, who does nothing for her or the kids except work. He blows his money gambling, cheats on her openly, and relies on her for everything else. For 6 years she's come to us venting about him, swearing it's the last time but always goes back. In 2020, after yet another huge fight, the entire family intervened. We sat her down, told her we were here to help with anything she needed, lawyers, a safe place for her and the kids, even handling the legal stuff if necessary. She agreed to kick him out, but within 6 months he was back because he couldn't find a place to stay. This grown man, who has worked a steady job for 20 years, somehow needed help. Since then, things have gotten progressively worse. Barbara decided to stick with marriage counseling, even though the whole family urged her to leave. She's clung to the idea of honoring her marriage despite the toxic environment. As a result, her kids have started to suffer. The eldest, Leo, started skipping school and smoking heavily a few months ago. My husband got a 2 a.m. call from Leo, who said he was life-ending and afraid to act on it. When we got to their house, we learned he had told his stepdad the same thing. And Ray told him to just do it because no one would care. My husband, understandably, punched him in the face. We took Leo to the hospital, and after his release, brought him home with us for 3 weeks to help him recover. Eventually, Leo returned to his mom's house, thinking things had smoothed over, but they quickly fell apart. Soon enough, the second oldest, Oscar, began having issues too. For months, they'd been fighting constantly, and we didn't realize how bad it had gotten until we couldn't get in touch with either of them. Barbara had gone silent. My husband showed up at her house unannounced, something our family often does for fun, only to find out that she had washed her hands of Leo and Oscar for being disrespectful, and kicked them out. She had even turned off their phones and didn't know where they were staying. We found out they'd been crashing with friends for weeks, trying to stay under the radar because they were embarrassed. We picked them up from school and brought them home with us again. They told us that their mom and stepdad had been bullying them constantly, fighting, and that they didn't feel safe going back. Barbara admitted that she kicked them out but insisted things weren't as bad as they made it sound. Now my husband and I want to go full nuclear, report this to CPS, the police, and anyone who can intervene. The issue is that the rest of the family wants to handle it internally. We feel like 2 minors were abandoned, and that deserves an extreme response. But the family is now saying we're overreacting, and at the end of the day, these are not our children. So, are we the a-holes for wanting to report this situation and not leave it to family discussions? The 2 oldest boys are with us for now, but we're ready to escalate this. First of all, let me say F all those family members that want to handle it internally. Here's the thing, 2 kids or maybe more are being abused. Just press that button and gold nuclear all the way. Both Barbara and her husband are a couple of scumbags, and these children need protection now. I don't usually defend violence, but in this case, your husband punching that idiot? Yeah, it's a good thing, and hopefully it wasn't just one. While I was reading that part of the post, I had just one question. What did it feel like to hit that son of a gun? And honestly, to me, this requires no more analysis. This is something you need to report. Those children need to be kept safe. Barbara has miserably failed as a parent, and she's had all the chances she can get away from that scumbag. But she keeps opening the door to him. And she's the one that kicked the kids out. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section. And now, let's check out the community comments. Tears says, not the jerk abandoning their children is criminal. Almost amounts to murder. You handle it as strictly as you want. The behavior of their mom and dad is abhorrent. CPS needs to be involved. Other family members want to handle it on the down low because they don't want to be embarrassed. It has nothing to do with what is right for the children. No personality says, if they are abusing the oldest too, then they are abusing the youngest too. You are an a-hole if you don't protect those kids and contact CPS. Sister-in-law and her husband are giant a-holes. Astrid says, not the a-hole. You can save the other two kids a decade of trauma if you put your foot down and end this. If she won't leave him, that's her problem. But those kids need out. Don't be the family that watches them get burnt to the ground and does almost nothing but watch. K family, be the family that cares enough to save them. F all the enablers who get upset. I was that child. I will die with resentment for most of my family who knew but ignored it. Be the adults. Those kids deserve the right thing, even if it pisses people off because they can't pretend everything is perfect anymore. To outsiders, stop protecting the adults and protect the children. Pandora Tastic says it has been weeks since she kicked them out. The time to handle it internally is long past. Report them to CPS immediately. Who knows what further abuse has she subjected Rivaldo and Cristiano to? Alright, well the community agrees that OP wouldn't be able to handle this, and that she needs to act on this and report things now. OP did not reply to any comments or give us an edit, which means we move on straight to the update to see how this story ends. It's been nearly 2 weeks since I made my original post, and it's been a wild ride. I have to be incredibly vague because of the newly opened case, but here's the most important thing. All of our nephews are safe with us. The boys have always had a place here and have visited often since they were tiny, long before any of this chaos started. So while the transition has been emotionally jarring for them, the move itself was thankfully smooth. Now, as for Barbara and Reyes, they're facing charges regarding their treatment of the boys. It was worse than we originally thought. Barbara seems remorseful, but my husband is still livid. He believes she's only feeling sorry now that everything's out in the open and consequences are on the table. Whether her remorse is genuine or not, I'm just relieved we took action when we did, because it's terrifying to think how much worse things could have gotten if we hadn't. Family-wise, everything is a mess. The entire family is split over this, and it's not even worth the text to go over the thoughts of those who oppose us. Those who have sided with us, however, have been a tremendous help. Even though there are a lot of family issues and the logistics are complicated, I've decided, F it, we made the right decision. The details of the incident I need to share in more detail are as follows. Soon after I posted, Ray showed up at our house, demanding that the boys return home with him. They refused, and I told him to leave. However, he escalated the situation. It got loud, aggressive, and he started cursing at me and the boys. My husband wasn't home at the time. He was out picking up clothes and toiletries for Leo and Oscar. I can only assume Ray felt emboldened by my husband's absence because out of nowhere, he sucker punched me right in the mouth. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I saw red. I swung back. It wasn't smart, but I did. He wasn't expecting that. I'm nice and really easygoing, but I guess I forgot that. I jumped on him, and let's just say he didn't expect a fight. I might not have landed the best hits, but he wasn't prepared for one at all. He scrambled out of there and sped off. I immediately called 911 while the boys called my husband, who thankfully was just around the corner. I'm fine, just ended up with a busted lip that looked worse than it was. My husband insisted I go to urgent care. The police met us there, and that's when we reported everything, Ray's assault and the whole situation with the boys. Ray and Barbara were picked up the next day. In the middle of all of this, I found out I'm pregnant. Yep, while I was in urgent care they ran a routine test and boom, positive. I had no idea. No symptoms or anything, but it's still super early. All things aside, thank you for all the comments, advice and ideas. Your support made a difference, and my nephews are safe. Well, OP, even though you have a busted lip, I think it is a positive update. Like you say, the kids are safe, which is the most important thing right now. Barbara and Ray hopefully will face consequences for their actions, and you're pregnant, so congratulations. Hopefully, everything works out great on all three fronts. Take care, OP, and thank you so much for sharing. Now let's move on to the next post that also has an update. Am I the a-hole for giving my gluten-free mother gluten without telling her? My mother and I don't have a great relationship. Throughout my life, she has pushed all kinds of fat diets, self-help flavored fats, and even conversion therapy via the troubled teen industry on me. She's never apologized for any of it, despite me telling her how much it all messed me up. I still haven't mustered up the guts to go no contact because she's still married to my dad, who I do get along with and generally like. Well, I recently moved to a new place in a really nice area because I just got a really nice new job. Suddenly, my mom really wants to come and visit and see me. I do my best to make up excuses, but she pushes so hard that eventually, I cave. One of the things I've been doing since moving into my new place is a lot of cooking because I have a nice big kitchen all to myself. I love weird food and finding new ways to get protein in my diet without using meat. Something I've had a lot of fun making lately is lao. It's probably not weird to some people, but to my sheltered American self, it was funky as hell, and I loved the idea of it. So I started making it from scratch and discovered that I love it. My mom and dad got here yesterday afternoon/evening and settled in, and we started talking about dinner, as usual. Mom has to pick after looking at online menus for a couple of hours to make sure they fit with her dietary requirements. She ends up picking a vegan restaurant that's across town, but she's just so tired from the drive up she can't fathom getting back in the car. So Dad and I agreed to go pick it up while she rests. Driving across my new city is a long process, which I told her ahead of time, and it's a little over an hour later when we get home with the vegan, gluten-free food she wanted. She's not vegan but is adamantly gluten-free and has been for a few years now. We got inside, and as I was opening the food in the kitchen, I noticed the Pyrex Snapware container of latke that was in my fridge was now empty. In my sink, she even dumped out the sauce that I'd been soaking them in. I asked her if she'd eaten something out of my fridge while we were gone, and she said that yes, she had eaten some chicken because she was getting lightheaded from hunger, but it was terrible and she was so ready for some real food now. This is where I might have been the asshole instead. Instead of telling her what she had actually eaten, I just rolled my eyes and dished up the food for everyone and we ate. She continued to remark about how bad and oily the chicken was, and how relieved she was to finally eat something substantial. Throughout the rest of the evening my dad kept trying to change the subject, and she kept coming back to it. I finally snapped when she brought it up again first thing this morning, when I was picking them up from their hotel. I asked them where they wanted to go for breakfast, and my mom made a joke about not wanting me to cook them breakfast because she didn't want more oily chicken or something to that effect. I finally said, "Mom, that was homemade latke, and I don't understand why you ate all of it if you hated it so much." She asked me what latke is, and I explained that it's just vital wheat gluten and water steamed and soaked in sauce. I practically watched her face drop, and sure enough within 30 minutes, her stomach was killing her, and she was having difficulty breathing and needed to go to the emergency room. The whole time we were there, she went on and on to the nurses and doctors about how I'd fed her gluten and not told her until it was too late for her to take her medicine, crying because now the whole trip was ruined. Mind you, this is the hospital where I work. My dad pulled me aside to tell me he was disappointed that I hadn't spoken up last night, and how what I'd done not only hurt my mother's feelings but also put her health and safety at risk. He asked me to go home and think about my actions and give my mother some space. Now I'm just sitting here alone in my cool new place, feeling like an a-hole and super anxious about what work is going to be like next week. I'm torn because I don't think it's my fault that she ate my food without talking to me first, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't omit the information about what she'd eaten because I was pissed at her and just didn't want to discuss it further. I also didn't expect it to make her so sick. So, am I the a-hole? Well, I don't think you're the a-hole for feeding your mom gluten even though she's gluten-free because, well, she took it out herself. She ate it, she didn't ask for permission. And here's the thing, she didn't have any problems with it until you told her what it was. So, I'm guessing your mom is not really a celiac. But that's just my assumption. However, I do think you're a little bit of an a-hole because you could have told her right away instead of waiting for the next day. As soon as she told you she was complaining about the chicken or whatever, you should have said, "Mom, that wasn't chicken. Who gave you permission to go into my fridge? You ate something without knowing, and this is what it is." Yeah, she probably would have made a show of it at that time. But apparently, that's what she does. So again, OP, no, I don't think you're the a-hole for quote-unquote feeding her gluten because you didn't do that. But I still think you could have cleared it right away. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section, and now let's check out the community comments. Lap Steel Guitar says, "Your mom took food out of your fridge and ate it without checking first to see what it was. This is not on you. As for you not telling your mom last night and her physical reaction this morning, this is a mental issue, not a physical issue. She didn't get sick until she found out what she ate. She's fine." I bet she never eats anything from your fridge again. Not the a-hole Sal, right? 8446 says, my nephew has celiac disease, and as a 4 to 5-year-old kid, the parents would specifically ask regarding food being prepared safely for him. My brother-in-law let them know that they would know before the end of the meal if the restaurant provided a safe gluten-free meal. Lady complaining of medical concerns after finding out the next day? Come on. I roll and Nitz says, I bet it didn't make her sick. Getting sick right after she learned what it was is suspicious as F. Alright, the majority of the community agrees that OP is not the a-hole. I still think she could have just told her mom right then when she found out. But that doesn't change the fact that the whole eating something out of somebody else's fridge thing is not right. Anyways, let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. Just got home, so after everything went down this morning, I went back to the hospital to check on my parents. My mom was sleeping and still on the ED, so I got to talk to my dad and the doctors a bit. My dad still thought I should apologize, but I told him I would when she woke up. I wouldn't do that. That's her fault. When I talked to the doctor a bit, I started asking about testing. I asked if they had done a test for the specific kind of immunoglobulin present in celiac when someone has gluten. And she said she actually hadn't needed to because, apparently, my mom had that test done in the past with her PCP. The doctor asked me if I worked in the medical field, and I told her that yes, I worked in the lab. She then volunteered a bit more information than she probably should have, but I'm glad she did because I feel a bit better. She had managed to get my mom's lab results faxed over and looked them over. Apparently, my mom's TTG-IgA was low enough that it was absolutely clear that my mother does not have celiac disease. The doctor had offered to refer her for a biopsy, which is standard procedure for confirmation of celiac, but my mother declined. I later confirmed with my dad that it was because she didn't think it was worth it to go through all the expense and pain of surgery to confirm something she already knows. Furthermore, according to the nurse, my mother was given Lepam, which he told me was for her stomach pain and nausea. He actually put this in air quotes with his fingers, in case you're not familiar with lorazepam. It is a benzo that is also used as an antipsychotic or anti-anxiety sedative, along with gastro symptoms. Apparently, the medicine my mom was talking about was some kind of holistic herbal thing. Cherry on top is that the nurse is Chinese and loves leisho, and now I have a new work friend. I thanked them for all their help, and they indicated that she was ready to be discharged. My dad was not inclined to wake her up, but I explained that there were other people waiting who needed to be seen, and they couldn't be seen if there were no open beds. I then asked the doctor if she could write my mom a script for more lorazepam, which she agreed to. This seemed to placate my dad. I wheeled my mom out to my car. She was high as a kite and going on and on about how she couldn't believe that I'd poison her, and if I wasn't her daughter, I'd be going to prison. I just apologized and didn't offer any excuses. When I got them to their hotel, my mom was waiting on a couch in the lobby, while my dad grabbed her bags from my car. I told my dad it was probably better if they just went home. I'm not going to lie, I got a little emotional. He agreed, so yeah, based on the lab work and the way the ED staff were acting, I'm convinced my mom was faking it for sympathy and attention. Not that it matters because my dad would always support her no matter what. I'm never having them over again. Well, your suspicions are now confirmed. Your mom does not have celiac disease and I don't know if it's drama or what, but you don't need to pay attention to it anymore. So on that note, here's wishing you the best in the future. Take care and thanks for sharing. And that's it for today's stories.